When my husband Kendrick Salter, the richest Maine Houston, fell hard for some broke college girl, I didn't fight it. I just signed the divorce papers, packed up, and left country. I ended up in a quiet little seaside town, opened a small flower shop, made real friends, started dating someone kind. Eventually I said yes to marriage, got pregnant, and started building the family I'd always wanted. One random afternoon, an old friend from Houston burst through the door, stopped dead when he saw me behind the counter. "You're alive." His voice cracked. "Why the hell didn't you go back? Kendrick's been looking for you for years. He's lost this damn mind." I didn't even blink, just raised my left hand. The simple gold band caught the sunlight. "But I'm married now, and we have a kid." The shop went dead quiet. My friend's face drained of color. He swallowed hard, then glanced toward the door. I followed his eyes. Kendrick stood there, tailored suit, still ridiculously handsome, eyes locked on me like nothing else existed. I remembered everything in a flash. Year 3 of our marriage. He sat me down and set it straight. He'd fallen in love with a college girl named Lavinia Guthrie, asked for a divorce, offered to walk away with nothing left me, every penny, every property, everything. I lost it. Cried until I couldn't breathe. Threw things, begged on my knees, threw a wavery shred of dignity, just to hear him say he still owed me. "But I'm married now, and we have a kid." The shop went dead quiet. My friend's face drained of color. He swallowed hard, then glanced toward the door. I followed his eyes. Kendrick stood there, tailored suit, still ridiculously handsome, eyes locked on me like nothing else existed. I remembered everything in a flash. Year 3 of our marriage. He sat me down and set it straight. He'd fallen in love with a college girl named Lavinia Guthrie, asked for a divorce, offered to walk away with nothing left me, every penny, every property, everything. I lost it. Cried until I couldn't breathe. Threw things, begged on my knees, threw a wavery shred of dignity, just to hear him say he still loved me. Dropped everything. Let Lavinia walk free. For 3 whole years he played the perfect Husk game, home on time, remembered every little thing I liked, made me hot chocolate when my period hit, held through nightmares. Everyone said he'd changed, reformed. I believed it, until that night at dinner, some creep was harassing our waitress. Kendrick lost his temper, stepped in like the hero he always when the waitress turned around. My blood went cold. "Lavinia," he reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card and it to her. "Find this man. He'll give you an easy, decent job." Lavinia looked at him with those big, teary eyes, flicked the card away, getting back his dead walk in. "We're in love. Why can't we just be together?" She started crying, full heartbreaking sobs. Kendrick's face twisted, pain, conflict. "You think I'm not miserable. But this is the only way to keep you safe, Lavy. Be good. Take care of yourself." The second he turned to Levy, she lunged, kissed him. I stood frozen behind the potted plants, watched his Adam's apple bob as he fought himself for half a second. Then he cupped the back of her head, kissed her back. Deep, hungry, like he'd been starving for years. I thought I'd gone numb 3 years ago. Thought nothing could hurt like that first betrayal. I was wrong. The pain came roaring back, sharp, fresh, just as Bada's day one. Looking at the love and hunger in his eyes, silence first, then a soft, breathy sound, a woman's quiet moan, the rustle of sheets. My face burned, shame hotter than the paya. Few seconds later, Kendrick's voice calm came through. "Hey Tilda, sorry, got a last-minute Zoom company, drive home safe. I'll be back as soon as I fur." He hung up. Didn't even wait for me to speak. I lay there on the gurney, forced a smile more bitter than any tears. Voice raw, cracked. "I don't have any family. I can sign it myself." I scrawled my name. The pen slipped in the blood on my fingers. Then darkness swallowed me again. Coma. When I woke up, the room smelled like bleach and an aseptic, head pounding, body on fire. A familiar voice, soft, worried, right beside me. "Tilda, you're awake. How do you feel? Does it Kendrick, leaning close, concern all over his face, a fresh red mark on his neck, hickey shaped, still there. I stared at it, stomach twisted. He took my hand, squeezed gently. "I sincere. Don't worry. The guy who attacked you is taken care of. Anyone who hurts my girl pays for it. My girl, I looked at the man I'd loved for over 10 years. The man who'd begged me to drop charges. For Lavinia, who'd spent 3 years playing perfect. Husband who'd just hung up on me while she moaned in Heiser. Felt like a stranger now. The mistake should have ended the first time. He meditated some hearts, once given away, don't come back. I slowly pulled my hand free, hid the hurt. The disappointment. Nodded once gentle. Quiet. Kendrick let out a long breath. Relief washed over his face. He thought I'd forgive him again. Like always, once I got discharged, I went straight back to Thavila, hands shaking a little. I opened the safe, pulled out the yellowed divorce agreement. Kendrick's signature stared up from the bottom right corner, dated 3 years ago. Back then he'd sat across from me. Voice gentle, almost kind. Sign it. Tilda, let's end this peacefully. I'd lost it completely, ripped the papers into pieces, threw them in his face while tears streamed down mine, screamed that I'd rather die than sign, and yet, here it was. I'd taped every single shred back together, kept it like some twisted keepsake. I took a deep breath, picked up the pen, signed my name, slow, deliberate strokes. Done. I snapped a photo, sent it to my lawyer. Please process the divorce ASAP. Stick to every term exactly. Ihan, I started packing. It took one night to empty out the home I'd lived in for years. Suitcases by the door, jewelry, clothes. The little things I bought to Macbeth Place feel like hours. All gone. Kendrick didn't come home until the next night. He walked in carrying a fancy gift bag, smiling like nothing was wrong. Tilda, look what I got you. Limited edition bracelet from your favorite brand. Had it flown in from abroad. He saw me standing by the window, staring out. You've been cooped up for days. There's a cocktail party tonight. Let me take you get some fresh air. I didn't take the bag, just looked at him. Only then did he notice the suitcases lined up against wall. What's that? My old stuff, I said quietly. Decided to donate it. The cocktail party was in the ballroom of a 5-star hotel. The second we walked in, heads turned, Kendrick's arm around my waist, his smile perfect. Introducing me to partners and clients. We looked like the ideal couple, elegant, in love, untouchable. I smiled, nodded, said all the right things inside. Everything felt hollow, frozen. Then a waitress came over with a tray of champagne. Lavinia. Before anyone could react, a sound like metal snapping, the massive crystal chandelier above us broke free, plummeted straight toward Kendrick. Lavinia moved first, threw herself at him, pushed with everything she had. The chandelier crashed down, glass everywhere. Lavinia crumpled into a pool of blood, unconscious. Lavy. Kendrick's scream ripped through the room. He dropped to his knees beside her, face white with terror. He jerked his head up, eyes wild red. Call an ambulance now. He scooped her up, blood soaking his shirt, tanned wrapper. The exit. In his rush, he slammed into me, hard. I stumbled, the one with the 999 stone steps up the mountain. They say if you climb them with a true heart, your prayer gets answered. In the video, he'd stripped off his blood-soaked suit jacket. Just a white shirt now, face solemn, eyes steady, climbing step after step. A reporter shoved a mic in his face halfway up. Mr. Salter, who are you praying for? Your family. Kendrick looked straight into the camera, voice soft but firm. For the one I love the most. He heard the last part, and his face went dark. There's been a mistake. His voice was firm, protective. My wife would never do something like that. The officers didn't budge. We have initial evidence, suspect's confession, transaction records. They handed him a thin file. Kendrick took it, flipped through the pages, his expression hardened with every line, jaw tight, eyes turning colder and colder. Then he snapped, hurtled the whole file at me, papers scattered across the driveway like confetti. What the hell is this? I looked down, blurred screenshots of bank transfers, a handwritten confession claiming Ms. Stratton paid to have acid thrown on Lavinia. Opened my mouth to speak. Me. Plan an acid attack. Before I could say another word, Kendrick appeared. He'd cleared. He just arrived, still in his coat. Looking rushed, he heard the last part, and his face went dark. There's been a mistake. His voice was firm, protective. My wife would never do something like that. Asterisk, the officers didn't budge. We have initial evidence. Suspect's confession. Transaction records. They handed him a thin file. Kendrick took it, flipped through the pages. His expression hardened with every line, jaw tight, eyes turning colder and colder. Then he snapped, hurtled the whole file at me, papers scattered across the driveway like confetti. What the hell is this? I looked down, blurred screenshots of bank transfers. A handwritten confession claiming Ms. Stratton paid to have acid thrown on Lavinia. I opened my mouth to speak. Kendrick cut me off. Voice ice. Bring her in. Do whatever you need to do. Then he turned and walked away. Fast, clearly headed straight to Lavinia. They took me to the station. I spent the night in a cold holding cell. No blanket. No one to call. Next morning the police came back. Lavinia accepted a settlement. You're free to go. I signed the forms, walked out. I was about to hail a cab when a damp towel clamped over my mouth and nose from behind. Chloroform. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was inside a heavy hands and feet zip tied. The world rocked car trunk. Boat muffled voices filtered in. Ken, are you sure about this? Isn't it Gorsha still your wife? Kendrick's voice cold, flat. Too far? Did she think it was too far when she pour acid on your face? You went through 3 skin grafts. I'm going to teach her a lesson she never. My blood turned to ice. The man I'd loved for 7 years, the one bed with, built a life with, was kidnapping to punish me for her. The sack mouth tightened. Something heavy dropped inside, landed on my stomach. A rock. MMPH. I thrashed. Couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The sack was hoisted up, then dropped. Splash. Freezing river water flooded in through the fabric, filled my mouth, nose, lungs. Panic, cold, suffocating. I pulled me out. I coughed, gasped, sucked air. Seconds later, back in, out, out. Over and over. A sick game of nearly drowning me, then letting me breathe just enough to suffer longer. I'd believed his love, his promises. The 3 years he came home every night, all of it. A lie. Maybe it had been real once. Then he gave it away. And I'd been the idiot, clinging to the ghost of what is to be. They dragged me out one last time. I coughed up blood, vision blurring, from the riverbank. Kendrick's voice calm now. Enough. Throw her there. Leave her. I don't know how long I lay on the muddy bank. Dawn came. Pale light stabbed my eyes, with the last of my strength. I fumbled for my phone, screen cracked but still on 2 unread messages. First, Kendrick. Tilda. I've chosen family. I won't betray you again. But don't hurt Lavinia. She almost got disfigured this time. She's in bad shape. I'll stay with her a few days. Then come back to you. Second. My lawyer, Ms. Stratton. Divorce finalized. Certificate mailed to the house. Wishing you all the best. I stared at the 2 texts, then I laughed until I coughed more. Blood. Tears mixing with river water on my face. Blocked his number, no hesitation. I dragged myself up, body screaming, and limped away, back at the villa. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, cold, empty. A package sat on the coffee table. I opened it. To divorce certificates. I placed one in the most obvious spot, right in the center where he couldn't miss it. Then I grabbed the suitcase I'd packed weeks ago, gave the house one last look, the place I'd loved and creed in, waited in, been betrayed, and no regret. Not anymore. I opened the door, walked out, and didn't look back. Kendrick stayed with Lavinia for 3 days, getting back his dead wife during his stay. They barely left the hotel room. From the living room to the bedroom, from the bathroom to the balcony, every corner stood as silent witness to their wild intimacy. Like 2 insatiable beasts, they turned to the mass primal act to cement this love once lost and newly believing this was the only way to break loose from the shackles of marriage and let them live again. It until the 3rd afternoon did he leave. Exhausted yet satisfied, he drove back to the villa. He entered the password and pushed open the head door. A silence, deep and cold, rushed to meet him. Kendrick stood in the foyer. Frowning slightly, he took off the coat and tossed it onto the couch. Huguet swept the room, then suddenly stilled, in the center of the living room. On the expensive Italian marble coffee table, a sheet of paper lay along his chest, tightened as he hurried over. He picked it up, and the 2 letters on the cover caught his eye: divorce certificate. He froze for a beat, his fingers tracing her signature. She actually signed it. An unexpected surge of joy hit him. His heart hammered against his ribcage, making his ears ring. Finally, she signed it. Finally, he broke free from the invisible chains, from the invigorating prison of a marriage that had held him captive for 3 long years. He didn't even stop to think when she had signed or when she had left. An overwhelming sense of relief washed over him, that without thinking. He pulled out his phone and called, fingers quivering with excitement. The call was answered almost immediately. "Ken?" Lavinia whispered, her voice heavy with sleep, yet full of affection. "Lavi?" Kendrick's voice cracked with pure. She signed, "I've got the divorce agreement." She finally signed, "We're free at last. Truly free." A moment of silence stretched, then erupted into a scream of joy and tears. "Really, Ken? Is that true? Does this mean we can finally be together? And no one can ever stop us again?" "Yassel, it's true." Kendrick paced back and forth in the empty living room, his leather shoes clack. "Yes, it's true." Kendrick paced back and forth in the empty living room, his leather shoes clacking against spotless tiles. "Once I tie up the loose ends, I'll come get you. Lavi will never be apart again. I'm gonna give you the grandest wedding and make you the happiest bride in the world." Over the phone, Lavinia burst into tears as she babbled about how happy she was and how deeply she missed him. Clutching the phone, Kendrick listened to her tearful, joyous whimpers. His eyes fell on the divorce certificate, that symbol of freedom, and a rare, unburdened elation coursed through him. He had never felt so alive. Finally, he was free, completely free. Even after hanging up, he still couldn't steady his racing heart as he looked around the villa. For the first time in 7 years, it felt spacious and welcoming. He strode toward the liquor cabinet, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and gulped it down. The spicy liquid burned his throat, igniting the flame of rebirth in his chest. He grabbed his phone and called Manuel Halley, his assistant, his voice lighter than ever. "Manuel, it's me. I need you to contact the best interior designer in the... My house needs a makeover, inside and out. Everything replaced. Yes, everything. Arrange it as soon as possible." Hanging up, he sank into the chair and exhaled slowly. At last, he could begin a new life with Lavinia. At night, Lavinia arrived at the villa, clad in a white dress. She sashayed into his arms, graceful as a butterfly. Lifting her gaze, tears sparkled in her eyes like stars. "Ken, is this a dream? Can I really live here? Will this be our home forever?" "No, it isn't a dream," Kendrick whispered, leaning down to kiss her hair and drawing her closer. "From now on, this is our home." Lavinia scampered excitedly in the villa. Lavinia scampered excitedly in the villa, touching and examining everything in sight. When she spotted the massive bed in the master bedroom, she blushed, then wrinkled her nose. "Ken, you and Matilda used to sleep here, right? I don't want it. It smells like her. Can we replace it? I also didn't like the curtains, the dressing table, and the wardrobe. I want everything brand new." "Sure, anything for you." Kendrick smiled dotingly. "The designer will be here tomorrow. We can replace and get rid of all the things you don't like. Ken, you're the best." Lavinia leaped into his embrace, looped her arms around his neck, and peppered his lips with delighted kisses. Lust was ignited. They fell onto the king-sized bed that had once belonged to Kendrick and Matilda, eagerly tearing at each other's clothes. Kendrick panted, claiming the body beneath him that had long enthralled him, and reveled in their long-awaited union with unbridled passion, lost in the sensual pleasure. Kendrick opened high sighs to find Lavinia's cheeks flushed. She looked radiant and irresistibly alluring, but he accidentally caught a glimpse of the familiar sun above and the bedside lamp that Matilda had picked long ago. She always said that the Lowers were alive and needed to be cared for. He stopped in his tracks and, facing the empty living room, he said naturally, "Tilda, the lilies in the living room need fresh water. Their petals are starting to..." His words caught in his throat. The room was so quiet that he could hear his own breathing. Kendrick stood there, dazed for a few seconds. Then he pursed his lips, turned, and hurried off to the gym. Having finished his workout and a quick shower, he wandered into the kitchen habitually. Curio hat was for breakfast. To see but the kitchen was silent, the stove untouched. Only then did he recall that Lavinia was still asleep. He walked into the dining room. The table was empty as well. There was no steaming soup in the pot, no freshly squeezed juice, and no eggs and bacon fried to perfection. In the past, no matter how early or late he got up, Matilda would always have breakfast ready, varied and balanced. If he were in a rush, she would pack his breakfast in a lunchbox and urge him not to skip a meal. Kendrick poured himself a glass of water and drank it. One gulp, the cold water slid down his throat, clearing his doubts briefly, though it left his stomach unsettled. He had a chronic stomach problem for years, but he furrowed his brows, saying nothing. After 10 in the morning, Lavinia walked down the street, her eyes still heavy with sleep. She wore a silk robe, her long hair tied, and she looked beautiful even without makeup. Yawning, she strolled over and hugged Kendrick from behind as he read the financial news. She cooed, "Ken, I'm hungry. Let's eat out. I heard there's a new French restaurant downtown. The chef was trained at a Michelin 3-star restaurant. I'd love to try it." Kendrick put down the iPad and looked back at her. Her face glowed from just waking. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. He nodded. "Sure, go get changed first." Lavinia cheered and barreled up the stairs. Half an hour later, she came down, her makeup perfect, wearing the latest Chanel clothes, and carrying a Hermes bag. Her body was enveloped in an intoxicating scent of expensive perfume. She looked pretty, young, and stunning. Admiring the glamorous Lavinia, Kendrick couldn't help but think about Matilda, who always wore the cozy loungewear with no makeup, bustling around the kitchen. She carried the faint scent of food, not perfume. Kendrick shook his head, grabbed the car key, and said, "Let's go." Kendrick picked at the French feast, tasting none of its flavor. Said, "Let's go." Kendrick picked at the French feast, tasting none of its flavor. A crippling cramp twisted his stomach in relentless ways, as if an invisible hand was wringing it raw. Cold, fine sweat beaded on his forehead. His face turning pale gradually. Across the table, Lavinia was too busy snapping photos of the delicate foie gras and truffle soup in front of her. She shifted her phone for a dozen angles, tweaked the filters, and pored over her Instagram caption, not lifting her head as she asked, "Ken, does this one look a little dark? Should I turn up the exposure a bit?" Kendrick's fingers tightened around his water glass, his knuckles blanching white. He drew a deep breath in, then said in a low voice, "Lavi, I'm not feeling well. Let's head back early, huh?" Lavinia finally looked up, and she was slightly stunned when she saw his pale face. "What's wrong? Stomach ache again? Then drink some warm water." Her words were offhand and casual, and her gaze darted right back to her phone screen. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, a pleased smile still playing in her lips. Kendrick stared at her, and that faint discomfort in his chest spread like ink, seeping into clear water, slow yet unstoppable. Kendrick stared at her, and that faint discomfort in his chest spread like ink, seeping into clear water, slow yet unstoppable. A few days later there was an important business banquet. Kendrick took Lavinia with him. She was buzzing with excitement, dressed in a haute couture gown and dripped in a full set of jewelry, preening like a peacock with its tail spread wide. But the second they walked into the venue, she lost her nerve. She had no idea who to exchange pleasantries with, couldn't make head or tail of the industry jargon, and nearly sloshed wine all over a guest when someone asked her politely for her take in a project. She stammered, her cheeks flaring bright red with embarrassment. Kendrick stepped in to smooth things over for her then. He leaned in to tell her in whispers, "Just speak less and listen more at these events." Lavinia pouted unhappily. "Those people just looked down on me. They did it on purpose to make me look bad. This stupid banquet is so boring. I'd rather go shopping." Kendrick rubbed his brow and didn't say another word. Sadly, he thought of Matilda. Once, at events like this, she'd stand quietly at his side, poised and elegant, her speech calm and composed. When it was necessary, she would even smooth over awkward conversations for him, never once letting him face embarrassment. Back then, he'd taken it all for granted. And now, a hollow, sharp pain pricked at his chest, clearer and worse than any stomach ache. Lavinia changed bit by bit. After moving into the villa, she started checking Kendrick's phone, prying into his schedule, and grilling him for ages every time she saw a woman's name pop up anywhere. Kendrick would explain they were clients, business partners, but she'd never believe him. She'd scream and cry, yelling, "You've had a history of this. How do I know you're not lying to me again right now?" One time, Kendrick was in his study on a video call with a key female client, negotiating a merger deal worth tens of millions. Lavinia suddenly burst in, her hair a mess, and pointed at the screen, screaming, How dare you seduce my man?" The female client's face turned sullen, and an angry Kendrick shot to his feet, his mind going blank with a buzzing roar. He grabbed Lavinia by the arm and snapped at her, "Have you lost your mind? This is Lester, and we're in the middle of a serious business meeting. Don't lie to me." A man and a woman alone on a video call. There's no way that's normal. Lavinia struggled and wailed, "Kendrick, you're lying to me. Ich knew it." Kendrick stared as she screamed hysterically. Once, that face was all innocent and fragile, filling him with pity, but now, there was nothing but unreasoning rage and distortion left. A white-hot fury flared up inside him, boiling strato his head. He could hold it back no longer. Pointing at the door, he said to her coldly, "Get out." Lavinia froze, staring at him in disbelief. "I said get out," Kendrick roared, his voice rising sharply, the veins on his forehead bulging. "Right now out." Lavinia let out a loud wail and ran out, slamming the door behind her. Dead silence fell over the study. The other side had already hung up the video call. Getting back his dead while already hung up the video call, Kendrick sank back into his chair and buried his fessay in his hands. Exhaustion seeped into his bones. A few days later, Manuel knocked and entered Kendrick's office, his expression grave. "Mr. Salter, there's something. I think you need to see this." He held out a folder. Kendrick opened it. Inside were investigation reports in Lavinia from a private detective. As he flipped through the pages, his face darkened, his fingers crumpling the paper in his grip. That so-called hero saving the damsel in distress. It was all a show she'd staged on purpose. She hired men to harass her, all just to get close to him. The restaurant chandelier falling. She'd bribed the hotel staff to tamper with it. Her so-called self-sacrificing rescue was nothing but a ploy to trick him. She'd calculated the angling position perfectly, getting hurt just enough to shock him, but not badly enough to do real harm. The sulfuric acid attack. It had been her plan from start to finish. A frame-up on Matilda. The so-called attacker was Lavinia's distant cousin. And the money transferred into his account had all flowed back to her in the end. Even her original persona as a poor, hardworking college student was all elaborately faked. Kendrick slammed the folder down on his desk, the sound echoing through the empty office. His chest heaved with ragged breaths. His eyes bloodshot. It wasn't just anger. It was a deeper, almost absurd chill, seeping into every part of him. For 3 whole years, he'd thought he was protecting his true love. By sacrificing his marriage, he'd racked himself with guilt and torn his heart apart for this true love. He'd even done unforgivable things to Matilda because of it. But in truth, that so-called true love was a carefully plotted lie from the very beginning. He was like a fool, led around by the nose. That night, the most heated argument yet erupted in the villa. He was like a fool, led around by the nose. That night, the most heated argument yet erupted in the villa. Kendrick slammed the files down in front of Lavinia. At first, Lavinia tried to weasel her way out of it, crying that someone had set her up. But as Kendrick laid out the evidence point by point, her expression changed from fake grievance to panic, and in the end, it curdled into a reckless, bitter sneer. "Fine, I planned it all. So what?" She tilted her chin up, tear streaks still glistening on her cheeks, but her eyes were sharp and venomous. "Kendrick, don't act like you're innocent. If you hadn't craved something new, If you hadn't fallen for me, could I have ever tricked you? You were the one who betrayed in your marriage first. You deserve this. Get out. Kendrick stared at her, his eyes cold. Grab your things and disappear. Now you're throwing me out. Kendrick, think carefully. You wasted years of my youth on you. All those things you almost did to kill your wife. You let me do them. If I go out and start talking, try it. Kendrick cut her off, his voice eerily calm. Let's see who ruins themselves first, you or me ruining your entire family out of Houston for good. Lavinia was cowed by the sheer malice in his eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. In the end, she packed her things and slunk away. The villa fell silent once more. It was empty and colder than it had ever been. After Matilda left, Kendrick began to search for Matilda. He pulled every string he had, checking flight records, immigration logs, and bank statements. But she was gone, like a drop of water, evaporate in Jinto, then air. Not a single trace left behind. She'd never used the secondary card he'd given her. Never contacted a single old friend. Not even taken a single valuable thing from the villa. She'd only taken the old suitcase she'd brought with her when she first came. He finally realized how completely a person could vanish if they set their mind to it. A few months later, a faint lead pointed to France. Someone claimed to have caught a glimpse of an American woman with a profile very similar to Matilda's at the opening of a small art gallery. Kendrick booked a flight at once. He wandered Paris for days, asking around, and finally found Matilda's name registered at a prestigious art academy. Matilda was a short-term visiting student there, specializing in Western painting history and contemporary art practice. Kendrick followed the address to a quiet old neighborhood, where the apartment building had a small courtyard below. He stood across the street and watched Matilda walk out of the building. She wore a simple beige knit sweater and linen trousers. Her hair cut a little shorter, loosely tucked bent her ears. She held a stack of thick art books and a canvas bag in her arms. A pair of thin fromage glasses perched on her nose. Sunlight fell on her, and she squinted slightly. Hair expression calm, even soft, with a faint focus. Mish walked with a group of young people, fellow students by the look of them. They chatted as they went, and she nodded every now and then, speaking a few words of French in a clear, unhurried tone, her pronunciation not perfect, but steady. She showed no gloom, no sorrow, none of the numbness and emptiness that had clung to her in the last days he'd known her. She looked like she'd shed a heavy, suffocating shell, her whole being bathed in a gentle, hopeful light. It was a light that clashed violently with the anxiety, emptiness, and regret that hung over Kendrick like AFOG. Something squeezed Kendrick's heart tight, a dull, throbbing pain spreading through his chest. He watched her walk into a cafe on the corner, sit with her classmates by a window, spread out her art books, and keep talking. When she bowed her head to sketch quickly on a piece of paper with a pencil, the line of her profile was soft, her eyes bright and alive. It was the radiance of Matilda, the one he hadn't seen in a long while. He'd lost her. This realization hit him then, with the force of a boudoir, sending a shudder through every inch of his booty, his insides aching with the weight of it. Kendrick waited outside that cafe for a long time. Matilda's classmates left one by one first. Then, Matilda finally packed up her things and stepped out. Matilda. Kendrick stepped forward, his voice dry and hoarse. Matilda's steps halted. She looked up, and the softies in her smile vanished the second she saw him. Her eyes were calm, like she was staring at a complete stranger. Mr. Salter, she nodded, polite and distant, and then tried to walk past him. Tilda, let's talk. Kendrick blocked her path, his tone urgent. I know I've made a big mistake. I know everything now, Lavinia. She's been lying to me all along. I'm so sorry. Mr. Salter, Matilda cut him off, her voice light but, I've forgotten the past. There's nothing left for us to talk about. I haven't forgotten a bit. I regret it every single day. His eaves reddened. Was blind. I was an idiot. Punish me however you want. Just give me a chance. Make it up to me. Matilda stared at him calmly, as if he'd said something absurd. How? With what? When I was in the hospital, signing my own medical forms. When I was thrown into the river and almost drowned. She shook her head, a faint mocking smile tugging at her lips. No need. I'm doing well now. I don't want a single thing from you, Tilda. Also, Matilda interrupted, her gaze flickering past this shoulder. Mr. Salter. Your new girlfriend seems growing impatient. Kendrick spun around sharply. A sports car was parked by the road, its window rolled down. A young girl with bold, bright makeup was staring over, looking unhappy. She was a model Kendrick met at a bar the month before, someone he'd brought along to kill time. To prove to himself that he'd moved on. Right now, that pretty face looked nothing but garish and cheap. When Kendrick turned his head back, Matilda was already walking away. Her back was straight, her steps unhurried. She never once looked back. In the end, Kendrick didn't make it up to Matilda. He returned to America, and his life seemed to fall back into its old rhythm. Even more so, he began to splurge recklessly, going through girlfriends faster than ever. But only he knew that a piece of his heart was gone, hollowed out completely. He'd never get that sense of peace back. No lavish feast tasted like anything. No wild night of meaningless fun could fill the empty space inside him. When he woke up in the dead of night with a stranger beside him, his mind would drift to the way things used to be. The girl who'd silently cook some warm pumpkin soup when his stomach ached, who'd leave a glass of water and hangover pills by his bed when he got drunk, who'd curl into his arms unconsciously on stormy nights. Those trivial things he'd once ignored, taken for granted, they had now turned into a blunt knife, twisting and cutting at him over and over again. He started having insomnia, and his stomach pain was growing worse by the day. Sometimes, when driving past a flower shop, he'd stop and stare at the fresh lilies in the window, remembering how she'd once said, flowers have a life of their own. Sometimes, at banquets, seeing a partner stand by their spouse with quiet grace, he'd zone out, lost in thought. He tried to find someone like Matilda, someone gentle and quiet, someone understanding, but every relationship fizzled out quickly, leaving him feeling empty. It wasn't that they were bad women, it was just that none of them were her. The person he'd lost was Matilda, whom no one could replace, the 16-year-old girl who'd taken his love letter under the big tree. The young woman who had taken his love letter under the big tree. The young woman who'd waited patiently for him to come home from studying. The wife who'd once loved him with every fiber of her being. They were all Matilda. But Kendrick pushed her away with his own hands and destroyed her with his own choices. On the other side of the world, Matilda's life unfolded in a completely different direction. She finished her advanced studies, and under her mentor's encouragement, she began to try her hand at creating her own paintings. A year later, her small solo exhibition opened at a well-regarded independent gallery in Paris. Its theme was rebirth. The crowd at the exhibition wasn't particularly large, but every single person was absorbed in the art. A visitor lingered for a long while before a painting titled River and Morning Glow on the canvas. Dark, turbulent river waters surged, yet where the water made the sky, a faint thread of golden light pierced through. Matilda wore an elegant dress, smiling as she talked with the visitors, explaining her creative video fluently in French. A few months later she moved much larger studio and even planted a profusion of flowers in the yard. She was still alone, but her life was full and rich. She had a career she loved, true friends, and travel plans that spanned the globe. Occasionally, she'd think about the past, but thus memories had faded like old photographs, leaving gunly blurry outlines. They no longer stirred a single ripple of emotion in her heart. The pain had been real, but so was the healing. She finally understood that walking away from a wrong relationship was not a loss. It was freeing her hands to catch the life that was truly meant for her. As for Kendrick, he had become a dark long turnip page of footnotes on the canvas of her life. That was it.